Sturdy Fingers
TV.
Sturdy Fingers.
Boom, what up dude? Today we are back with a brand new video. Now I have been actively trying to stay away from politics on this channel because unfortunately it does seem to divide us, and I'm trying to focus on stories that will unite the audience rather than divide. However, this story is just too good not to share, in my opinion. Now, many people have no idea that this ever existed, but Donald Trump once had his very own Tour de France knockoff, hilariously called Tour de Trump. And aside from what you think about Donald Trump, the tour itself was actually pretty cool in a lot of ways. And this was 100% real, as much as this does sound like a joke. I'm going to explain a little bit more. Now, it was the late 1980s, and at this time, America was doing really great, and Wall Street was flying high. And at this time, Donald Trump decided that America needed its very own Tour de France, a high-level cycling spectacle headlined with the name Trump. And this was an incredible clash of cycling, casinos, and massive, huge egos. And this is one of the strangest moments in cycling history, and one that most people don't even know about or remember. So at this time in the late 1980s, cycling was experiencing a rebirth, and it was gaining a lot of popularity in America. While Europe dominated the sport for decades, the US was just beginning to get a little attention. And around this time, a rider from California named Greg LeMond completely shocked the world when he won the Tour de France. And however, despite this, America still didn't have a big race of its own, at least not one that gained international recognition like the Tour de France. And at this time, there were two men who recognized this and wanted to bring a big cycling tour to America. The first guy was named Billy Packer, and he was a college basketball broadcaster. And then there was John Tesh, and he was a musician and sports producer. And Billy and John had the vision for the tour, but they needed a whole bunch of money, and they needed a big fancy name. And at the very same time, Donald Trump was larger than life. He had casinos, beauty pageants, big giant buildings, and they all had the name Trump plastered all over him. You couldn't miss him. So when Trump agreed to sponsor the race, he did have one non-negotiable demand, and that was that the race needed to be called Tour de Trump. And the name was instantly slammed by the cycling community as being narcissistic and completely absurd. Trump, on the other hand, was probably more focused on the fact that the name gave him a ton of publicity, and Trump invested close to $750,000 to launch the race in 1989. And the race ran from Albany, New York to his very own Trump Plaza in Atlantic City. So this did confuse people. They were confused as to whether this was supposed to be a serious race or just a giant ad for his casino empire. And I think it was definitely a combo of the two. And aside from the spectacle, it really was an incredible race. There were teams from all over the world that showed up, and even crazier than that, total rivals, Soviet and Eastern German national crews, competed against each other here in America. And it was all under a big, giant Trump banner. So on one hand, this was totally insane for the cycling world, but it was also really awesome for people who got to see these incredible teams from all over the world finally compete in America. And the race was over 800 miles, and they broke that down into 10 stages. It went from New York, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and New Jersey. And the winner was a dude named Dag Otto Lauritzen, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, but it's cool. And Dag was from the 7-Eleven team, and this guy brought a whole bunch of credibility to the race because he was a former Olympic bronze medalist and a Tour de France stage winner. So that's huge to have a Tour de France stage winner win the Tour de Trump. So Trump was obviously super hyped off of this because overall it was a giant win for him and his brand. And Trump said that it was a triumph and that it united the world through sport. So, in Trump fashion, you could maybe say that that was a little bit of an over exaggeration, but it was a dope bike tour nonetheless. So, naturally, Trump brought back the race in the year 1990, and this time the race expanded to 11 stages and increased to a total of over 1,100 miles. And this one started in Boston, but still hilariously finished in Atlantic City. So, again, another funny way to just keep promoting the Trump brand. And a big name cyclist, Greg LeMond, showed up fresh off his second Tour de France victory, and that alone brought a huge wave of international media. However, it was actually Raul Alcala from Mexico from Team PDM who dominated the event, and Leon finished second. And this second Tour de Trump was another huge success. However, at the very same time, the Trump empire was actually falling apart behind the scenes. At this time, the real estate crash hit extremely hard. In addition to that, Trump's casinos were losing cash at an alarming rate. So at this point, Trump could no longer afford to sponsor a multi-million cycling event. So the Tour de Trump was over after just two editions. And many people weren't surprised to see it end, as it was openly mocked for its flashiness that directly contradicted the cycling lifestyle. However, on the flip side, it was actually a pretty cool annual race, and that finally brought some big names from the cycling world to America. So for cycling fans, the end of the Tour de Trump was actually a huge bummer. So in 1991, the tour was reborn under the name Tour DuPont. And as you could guess, the sponsor was now the chemical giant DuPont. So this was a brand new tour in many ways, as DuPont brought corporate professionalism to the tour rather than just being a big sideshow to promote the Trump brand. And the route now went further south and featured bigger prizes with improved logistics and much better public relations. So without the presence of Trump completely dominating the race, it was finally taken a little bit more seriously and judged on athletic merit. And over the next few years, some of the world's best riders would compete. And a really young Lance Armstrong actually won back-to-back in years 1995 and 1996. So this was before Lance Armstrong became a household name. So at this time, Lance was the face of a new generation of cyclists, and the fact that he was American was notable because the US was still not known for dominating the sport. So by this time, Tour DuPont had actually become the most prestigious race in North America. Yet with all this momentum, DuPont pulled out in 1996 and the race could no longer continue without such a huge sponsor. However, there are also tours such as the Tour of California and the US Pro Cycling Challenge. So in the end, people do look back on the Tour de Trump in many different ways. On one hand, it came across as satire, as Trump's name was just plastered all over the place on every sign, jersey, poster, everywhere you look. On the other hand, underneath all the over-the-top branding was an actual serious attempt to take cycling in America to a global level. And the event brought top-level European teams to compete on US roads. And this introduced elite-level cycling to an American audience. And it also showed Americans just how big cycling could be in America with the proper funding. So the Tour de Trump and the Tour DuPont actually did serve as somewhat of a template for future races here in America. And they also helped to introduce the world to Lance Armstrong, who became one of the most famous cyclists, at least here in America, and also one of the most infamous. So, in the end, the Tour de Trump was somewhat of a ridiculous, ego-driven event, but at the same time, it was the first of its kind here in America, and that was incredibly exciting for cycling fans, and it helped launch the career of Lance Armstrong, who brought even more recognition within the cycling industry back here to America. So, what do you think? Was the Tour de Trump a huge sideshow, or was it an incredibly important part of cycling history? Let me know your thoughts. I personally would love to see a huge event like this take place here in America again, but I want to know what you guys think. Thanks for watching. Please like, please subscribe. I'll see you on the next ride. Boom!
If you want a new electric bike, use my links and discount codes in the description below. Also, please like, subscribe, and say what's up in the comment section below. Check out another video right here, and check out another video right here. You decide, you're the boss.
Boom.
Perfect.